Good evening. Welcome to the Steelers Sanctuary podcast. I'm Leanne Lohman. I'm joined tonight by Zach Franciscus, Dave Ribeiro, Bob Quinn, and David Korab, and we are thrilled beyond measure to come and talk to you about the Steelers beating the Ravens in Week 11, 18-16. It was an exciting win at Acrisure Stadium. Of course, like all Steelers-Ravens games, it was a close physical match. Full of a lot of defense and defensive stands, and we'll jump right into the action talking about them. The good news coming out of such a physical game is that there were no significant injuries. I heard Mike Tomlin say today that he believes Alex Highsmith is still going to likely be out for another week, but they're working on that. But there was at least no other major injuries coming out of that game, which is good news. Guys, what were your initial thoughts about the game? Zach, what did you think initially, in a word or two?
Impressive and statement. Those are two words I would use.
Yeah. Dave?
Yeah, the defense was phenomenal. That's the come away from that game. Defense was unbelievable.
Yeah. Bob, what about you?
I think this just might be my masterpiece.
Huge game from Mike Tomlin. Very, very impressive.
Yeah. David?
Yeah, just like Zach said, statement game, coming out of the defense, letting the whole league know, hey, we're fucking legit and we're coming for this league.
Yeah.
That's what I took from it, honestly.
Yeah. And me too. And I want to jump right in and have us start talking about that defense, because I immediately jumped on Twitter. And the first thing I said after the game is I don't want to hear any more bullshit about how we don't have a legitimate defense anymore. We've heard every single week. We've talked about it. I know I've brought it up every week. You know, we weren't going to be a legitimate team till we beat the Jets. And then we weren't going to be a legitimate team till we beat the Giants. And then we weren't going to be a legitimate team till we beat the Commanders. And then it was the Ravens. And now, I mean, I don't know where else you can move the goalpost. And I feel like, you know, now you have to finally give this credit to this defense for being as legitimate as they are. I thought in a game where offense didn't play the greatest, so they weren't getting as much rest as they should have gotten, you know, or as long of breaks as they should have had. So let's start talking right about them. What did you guys think about the defense? What were your key takeaways? Zach, we'll start with you.
Okay, well, first off topic, I haven't seen my aunt in the chat before, so Sandra Lehman, that's my aunt right there.
Oh,
shout out for jumping in. Love her for me. As far as the defense, it was remarkable. It really was. We were going up against a team that I didn't expect us to play with the same kind of tenacity we've seen in Ravens, Steelers in the old days, and it was chippy. And that's what I liked about it. That it seems like the players wanted to bring something back to the rivalry that all week we had heard was missing. So that specifically stood out to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this was the best defensive performance of the season. We've been giving them shit about being the highest paid defense in the league and not coming through. They came through big time yesterday. I mean, we talked about it on the preview show, how do you stop, you know, Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry at the same time, and you know, throwing those wide receivers, and how they're going to do this. Man, they were pretty dominant from start to finish. Lamar Jackson looked a little nervous in the backfield. He looked a little shaky. Derrick Henry only had 75 yards rushing. I mean, you can't ask for any better than that. You can't ask for better. 65.
We held Lamar to 37 plays, I believe, and Henry to 37 runs, and Henry to 13. So,
yeah, I mean, you can't ask for any better.
Else has done that.
You really can't. Turnovers, chippy play, fantastic. Old school AFC North football.
I don't know if it was held Henry to 13 as much as Baltimore consciously made the decision in a one-score game not to run the football. And we talked about this on the preview podcast. Baltimore might just go Baltimore, and they did. Why in a one-score game, and especially, you know, when you break down Henry's numbers, 13 carries for 65 yards, 31 yards was on one run. He scored the touchdown to give him a lead. I don't understand. He only carried the ball 5 times in the second half. Why they did that? It was great for us because we mostly held him. He had a couple of big runs, but you know, the fear with Derrick Henry is that he'll wear you down and beat you in the fourth quarter. Well, Baltimore didn't let him beat us. I mean, I heard today on the Pony Show, but I've heard other places too. The PM team of Pony and Mueller Why wasn't Derrick Henry in on the 2-point conversion? He wasn't on the field.
That's insane.
You would think the threat of the RPO, and Harbaugh after was like, oh, yeah, that's a play we had. Yeah, it's a stupid play we had, so thank you, Baltimore. I thought the defense played their best game of the year, but I don't think that's the best they can play. I think that was an A-, and the rest of the NFL should be very scared. If A- wipes out the number one offense in the NFL, be very scared of what happens when we play A+.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're talking about an offense for the Ravens that was putting up 440 yards per game. We held them to 329. Talk about, former MVP or Mr. Jackson, as Tomlin calls Lamar Jackson. Look, the guy only threw for 207 yards. He had like a 66.1 quarterback rating. You guys are talking a lot about Henry. We shut Jackson down yet again as well. And it's just extremely impressive what we managed to do, honestly. Just to do that with both Henry and Jackson, man. I mean, what a statement by them to be able to do that with both of them. I figured one of them would go off a little bit, but no, didn't happen. And quite a message being sent.
And undefined throwing out their defensive player of the game is Peyton Wilson. That interception was phenomenal.
Yeah,
crazy.
Hard to pick this one play. And our friend Nick Herbig, who 4 out of 5 of us think is a great
Hall of Fame Herbig, baby.
Hall of Fame Herbig forced a fumble. His first chance at Derrick Henry, he forces a fumble. It was awesome. I mean, I think there was a lot of defensive MVP.
We should shout out the defensive line. They were pretty dominant in this game. I mean, Cam Hayward, Larry Ogunjobi, Keanu Benton, they controlled the line of scrimmage, and that set the tone for the rest of the defense. They were really, really impressive.
Yeah, I heard a comment today. I think it was Rex Ryan said that the coordinator who's best able to defeat the Ravens offense is Todd Monken, that he gets too creative and too cute in these games. He tries to outthink his opponents. He did it to himself in the playoffs. Do you know what I mean? He did it in this game. Why are you not doing the thing that's been working for you all season and running Derrick Henry? And I think that that's a fair assessment of Henry. He's always been a player that's gotten better as the game has gone on. He almost needs to warm up a little bit. And so to only have him handle the ball a handful of times is for him a travesty. For us is just fine. But I do think it underpins just how much the Steelers defense, I think, rattled that offense. I don't think it's fair to just pretend we couldn't have done this and Todd Monken, was responsible for shooting them in the foot. I think that there was a lot of players, as we mentioned, Herbig and Joey Porter Jr. and Patrick Queen, and we had all Peyton Wilson, all these players come up with big plays in the line. But I think one we need to really talk about on their own is Minkah Fitzpatrick. He's taken a lot of heat. I know he still didn't have that interception that we're all hoping for him to get soon, but he definitely had a really timely improvement. Dave, what did you think about Minkah's performance?
Yeah, much better. He saved. I'm sorry, Dave. He saved 2 touchdowns. He got Derrick Henry by the shoestrings on one, and then he got Andrews on another. Played a little closer to the line of scrimmage, a little bit more what we want to see. Still like to see those turnovers, though. He still would like to have that big impact on the game. But overall, that was a better Minkah game for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think he played better. I mean, as far as the turnovers go,
well, we're waiting.
Yes, we are.
We need him to get an interception. We need him to force a fumble. But we can't undersell the fact that 2 pretty big tackles saved touchdowns. And overall, I think he was a little more involved. I thought Mark Andrews kind of cooked him a couple of times, but overall, they were very minor things. They were nitpicky things. The 51-yard rush, I didn't love that, but he held him to 34 yards on 12 carries, as far as Derrick Henry goes. Lamar rushes for a few big plays, which, again, we kind of said on the preview podcast, there is going to be a time where Lamar escapes and gets down the field. I thought it was glaring when they were trying to come back. That one pass he kind of forced up there and didn't complete. And even the announcers, I think it was Charles Davis, said he could have ran for 50 yards. There was nobody if he just took off. I don't know what made him stand there. I don't know that it's fair to Todd Monken, who I do think gets viewed, but John Harbaugh's been the coach of the Steelers for nearly as long as Mike Tomlin's been the coach of the Steelers. The Ravens have been getting cute as long as Harbaugh has been in charge. So, you go back to Greg Roman. You blame Greg Roman. You blame, all their coordinators over the years. It's Harbaugh. He thinks he's smarter than Tomlin, and he wants to prove it. And I think going away from Derrick Henry was more his decision than it was Lamar's. And by the way, I think Lamar played his best game against the Steelers this past time, and it was still pretty shaky. But let's face it, he gets that 2-point conversion. They don't blow that play.
For me, as far as Minka goes, the thing for me this game was, guys, that the guys you're paying to show up showed up. Minka came through with some big tackles. He was second on the team in total tackles with 7, 4 solo. TJ Watt was there to have a couple tackles for a loss and a sack. But the big one was Queen. Jennifer mentioned it earlier, and nobody said anything, was that, Queen had his best game of the season. And we saw it coming. I mean, he was going to want to have a big game against the Ravens. But all these guys showed up that needed to show up, and a couple that we weren't expecting, like Peyton Wilson, to do what he did. But yeah, Minka, it's been tough. You're expecting Minka to do a lot more than what he's getting paid to do. But look, at least he was here to show up for this game and make the TD saving tackles that he did make, which was huge. So yeah, pretty happy with Minka for this game.
Yeah, we got a new face in chat, by the way. Sorry, Zach. Big Poppy saying Mr. Jackson may want to show the same respect back to that Steelers D. Absolutely.
That's
right, Zach, go ahead.
Do you think the passing's going to his head a little bit? Because there was a couple times where he could have run, and he chose not to.
That one on that play Bob mentioned, I mean, that was huge. He was wide open and chose to stand there. I don't know if that's them telling him not to, but they supposedly gave him all this power, in this year to make these decisions. And then to see him not run surprised me.
I think he thinks he's a passer now and not a runner anymore, so he's turning down big runs.
Actually,
we all are.
I'll jump in with a little bit of the X's and O's because I haven't watched all of it, but for what I saw, Lamar Jackson was getting overwhelmed mentally by the fact that he had 2 all-pro guys on him. From the start of the game, it looked like Minka Fitzpatrick had a lot of responsibility checking to see either communicating what Lamar was doing or being directly on Lamar. He was the one who was running up. He was the one who was making sure Lamar wasn't doing it. But the secondary guy was Patrick Queen. Patrick Queen was if Minka couldn't get there, and it's all game. And that was from the first quarter, and twice in the first quarter they beat them on the 42-yard to Isaiah Likely, and then the keeper that Lamar took that pretty much fooled literally everybody on earth except for the Ravens who knew it was happening. But that was the only time after that they shored up. Their communication was better, and Lamar, every time he looked up, he was being watched, not by one, by 2 guys that were as fast as him. And that's the problem. Minka was keeping up with him. So I think by the end of the game, simply knew if he tried to run, he wasn't getting a lot and he was going to get hit. So it wasn't worth that to him. He tried to force a lot of plays because of that too. And that specifically speaks to how well Minka was doing too. So I'm just so impressed at what Terrell Austin put together for this game. I think it was Nick Faraba on Twitter said that the biggest improvement for the Steelers was moving away from what they did in the first half of the season. And that's hard to do for a defensive coordinator. So bravo to him. Very, very impressed.
Yeah, and our good friend from Define point now that he was surprised how well the D-line played. Yeah, I thought Hayward was huge on those pass deflections. Was it Loudermilk or maybe Lowry?
Dean Lowry got one too.
Loudermilk had a big hit. I mean, they all had really good games. Joey Porter Jr. too, as Yinder said down south, that he had a big game. I mean, this was a really like a team effort in the best kind of way in this defense. I mean, I thought that, they all looked markedly better. Peyton Wilson, we haven't even talked about him yet.
We kind of mentioned they thought he was the defensive MVP, but but you're right. It wasn't just that play. Peyton Wilson also played a good game when he was on the field, but Landon Roberts understandably got most of the snaps.
Peyton Wilson was the highest graded player in the game by PFF.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Really?
I love that for him. And I loved it
What
for
makes me so happy?
Patrick Queen. I was so glad to see him have such a good game. Deshaun Elliott had a good game against their old team. I think, that Tomlin does that get in your head stuff. I heard Craig Wolfley talking about it a little this week, that he specializes in that, spending the whole week letting guys know, they didn't want you and they cast you aside and they don't think you're good enough, and, just really getting in guys' heads. And it obviously works.
What about Big Poppy's point here? Do you think that Hall of Fame Herbig stripping? I love that that's his name now, by the way. Hall of Fame Herbig stripping Derrick Henry on that first play. Do you think that maybe they did a little what we do with Jalen sometimes when he fumbles, or like, hey, go to the bench?
No, I think it's the exact opposite. That's the first time, 538 times he fumbled?
Right.
That was a situation where get back on the horse and get your streak going again. So I don't think for one singular moment they thought that. So, but
I think overall, I think they were a little bit rattled. Do you know what I mean? I think they got really big for their britches. Offense, the offense in general. I don't know that I think that Henry, he's too much of a pro, and I can't imagine, like Zach said, he so rarely fumbles.
Leon, I agree. I think they were a little shell shocked by what we were doing so quickly. I mean, the fumble right off the bat, and then they just weren't really doing much with the ball in general. And I think they were really surprised. This is the first game where they really got smacked in the mouth and got shut down. And I think that was kind of a shock for them. Honestly.
Our defense has had some hiccups this year. Do you know what I mean? And we've been pretty fairly critical of them when we need to be critical. And I think that they figured, well, they had those hiccups against some of these lesser teams. Well, they're really going to struggle against us. You know what I mean? And we're going to be able to put them in their place. And I don't know. I love the credit that Mike Tomlin gave to Justin Fields for being able to kind of play the part of Lamar Jackson to help the team get ready. Because we've heard the defensive players talk about what an invaluable resource that is.
That's true. And I got an interesting point that I want to make. Number one, I don't.
Once.
I thought it was
he only
one.
fumbled once. Yeah, likely it was the other one who fumbled. Anyone who said that, the Ravens, it was penalties and all that, coming into the game, the Ravens were the most penalized team in the league. This is something they've struggled with all season. It wasn't this. My mother, I don't think I've ever heard her say this, turned to me during the game and said, this is a really good officiating crew. And we kind of agreed, where even though there was some calls, it was well explained. I don't feel like any of the calls that went either way were egregious. I thought they let them play where they were supposed to. Push-offs on both. Zay Flowers pushed off. Pickens pushed off. It was the kind of game you want, balanced on each side. So anyone who says, and the second thing, we've overcome exactly the same thing the Ravens had, and we've won games. Big plays taken away, we had that, and we won games. Big penalties against it, we've had that, and we've won games. This was supposed to be one of the best teams in the league. If everyone is still holding to what they said before, we need to be considered as one of the best teams in the league right now.
Yeah, I agree.
Joey Porter Jr. did a great job of.
To Darth Sniper's comment about the national media still shitting on us, said as if they know nothing about the AFC North wars. They're all acting like Baltimore lost and we didn't win. And I think that's a really accurate way to put it. We listened today we all know now that the Bills beat Kansas City last night. And look, it's not to take anything away from either one of those teams, but you would still think they were the only two teams left in the AFC. And it's just a foregone conclusion, that one of the two of them are going to the Super Bowl. And I don't know that I think that's fair.
It's not. I mean, after what our defense did to the number one offense in the league, how could you think them? I mean, think about it. All we had to do, if we convert one of those field goals into touchdowns, we win that game easily. It was only close because of the fact we kicked so many field goals. We convert just one, and we were up by 9 to 12 points against them.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, we whooped their ass basically, except our offense couldn't get a touchdown. That's it. Yeah. So I don't know how people can think this. I understand that. I would like to think, Bills have a better offense, and so do the Chiefs. But the Chiefs are not. Mahomes is having a down year. The Bills, from time to time, they stink it up too. Every once in a while, the Bills lay an egg against some teams. They just do.
Yeah, they do.
Haven't really done that. And now that we got Russell Wilson at the helm, yes, he had a bad game, but at the same time, he's 4-0, 5-0 now as our starter. We've been on a roll. We were second points in the league before this game under Russell Wilson. So
honestly, David, if Darnell Washington jumps for that ball, He doesn't have an interception, and we're probably up 22-10.
I don't know about that one. I know a lot of people think that, but that's just a horrendous throw,
I
man.
watched that from
The 2000 Ravens went to the Super Bowl and won it. They had 5 games that season. They won off of field goals. So,
Right.
you know, it's
Yep.
not unheard of. I'm not, before anybody comes from my head, I'm not comparing us to the 2000 Ravens. So please don't come at me. I'm just saying that it's not unheard of. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
the
it's a good stat.
point is to get the win, and you get the win however you have to get it. And sometimes they're pretty and sometimes they're not. Kansas City's been doing it all season, and no one's talking about their ugly ass wins.
No.
Let's be quite honest. The theme has been the Steelers beat somebody. Suddenly, that team isn't as good as they were before. That's
Yeah, you can't say with the Ravens though.
moment
You can't do that with the Ravens.
Oh, no,
This is legit.
no, but people are. That's what's frustrating me. I was
Nah.
expecting. I don't know why I was expecting the respect, but now in Pittsburgh, there is a lot of confidence in the Pittsburgh media. There's a lot of people that say we realize that if we went up against teams like the Bills or the Chiefs, well, we could hold our own. It's not like the seasons before where that was an overwhelming feeling. Right now, I genuinely feel like we could take on, and now the Lions, that kind of offense would give us some trouble here and there, but Goff likes to throw interceptions. And if he wants to give us 5 again, then we'll, and there's so many reasons why this team has those little differences that matter.
Yeah.
Well, Undefined's got a good point here. It's not all the national media. You know, Shannon Sharp, and he wasn't the only voice today, was giving the Steelers quite a bit of praise. I didn't see this. Jennifer brought this up. Noah Strackbean, did anybody see this? That Russell was having trouble with his calf on the sideline? I didn't hear
I
that.
didn't see that either.
That's
I didn't
new.
see that.
I think
Yeah, I
there's a
didn't hear that.
difference between having someone working on your calf and having trouble with your calf. So that's a line I don't want to.
I wouldn't be surprised if he had somebody massaging it, you know, between
He's got
plays
his-
to keep it loose.
He's got his own personal calf massager he's paying on the sideline.
Where do I get one of those?
Yeah.
Of course he
Right?
does.
My calf's acting up.
Amen, Big Poppy. I agree with you. Good teams find
Yeah.
ways to win, and we're winning.
That's
I think the bias there is the quarterback, right? All those teams that you guys mentioned have like franchise big time quarterbacks, and I think people are slow to come around on Russell Wilson, and I think that's the difference, especially with the national media.
And yet again,
You know, we don't have
I'll say
Patrick
it again.
Mahomes. We don't have Ben Roethlisberger. It's going to take a while. for people
We
to-
have TJ Watt.
Yeah,
Watt is
but-
our Patrick Mahomes, and that's where we spend our money too. So people should not expect Russell Wilson to be. We have that, but people don't see it the same way. So, and by the way,
yeah,
I
the
love
national media.
every single time they left Watt, anything double teamed or less, he was right in the backfield. That hit on Henry made my heart happy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it.
Let's shift gears and talk about the offense a little bit. I see that Vaughn's comment is up here about loving to see more of the Fields package. We did finally see Fields come in yesterday for the first time. He channeled his inner Roosevelt Knicks and didn't manage to slide far enough to pick up the first down. Interestingly enough, I actually said that and then heard Roosevelt Knicks was at the game yesterday. So I thought that was amusing. In the world of like random shit that happens. Bob, what did you think about the use of Fields?
I thought it was good. I think it was well timed. It was unfortunate that he slid. You could see on his face when he popped up and did the first down. He thought he had it. But to me, if it's close, take another 2 or 3 yards and just be safe. And, honestly, if he really bulls into those corners who are out there on him, he might have broke that tackle and scored, or at least ran for 20 more yards, if not scored.
Yeah.
I think and I know we're going to talk about this a lot. I think the Justin Fields package needs to be more than 2 or 3 plays. I'm not saying every down, but we're having problems in the red zone. We all saw it yesterday. We're having problems. When we get down inside the 10, look, Fields can throw the ball. He's not Tim Tebow. He's not Lamar Jackson. He can throw the ball. I mean, Russell has a much better throw it up ball, but you just can't commit to the run if Fields comes in inside the 5 or 10 because he can hit a guy, which he showed the first 6 games of the season. So I personally loved it. I want to see more of it. I just think it's unfortunate that maybe that slide will, give Tomlin pause going forward.
Yeah, just to piggyback on Bob, Fields inside the 10-yard line has 8 of his 10 TDs are inside the 10-yard line. So it's pretty good. In the red zone, he does very well. So, yeah, there's no doubt that he should be in the red zone more. I was glad you guys were just right when you said you think this was going to be the game. I really did think they were going to save him for the Chiefs, but I'm glad they didn't. And I think that I think I was listening to DK, or one of them were indicating that Tomlin kind of said, yeah, you're going to see more of that often. And I'm like, oh, that's amazing. So I hope they do, because it's a hell of a weapon to have. And, like I said, I've always been worried about that draft pick stuff, but I'm hoping they're ignoring it and they see it works and they need it. If so, it's going to be a huge weapon going down this stretch.
Yeah. Zach, what did you think?
I feel like this is a little bit of the last lingering effects of the Matt Canada situation, where Arthur Smith is doing this intentionally, and we're not exactly sure how to view a competent offensive coordinator, not just throwing shit at the wall and expecting it to work. I genuinely feel behind the scenes every single week he's been looking. It's like, no, it's not ready. It's not ready. And this time he's like, it is ready enough if we need to pull this out for a couple plays. And what he saw is, even if the slide, Justin Fields can get at minimum 8 yards. That was 7-8 yards. And if he wanted to, he could have got a lot more. So I think there was handcuffs on him specifically for those plays, but I think the opposite of what Bob said as far as what the Tomlin may have seen. I think they saw enough to say, oh, we are going to open this up coming up, especially against the Browns, because, and I'm so sorry, my dad Wayne's going to be upset, but the Browns did not know how to handle Taysom Hill. They could not handle him. And if we do anything close to what Justin Fields can do with him, then it's going to be an exciting day. So I think this is just the start, that what they saw isn't going to be encouraging.
My thing is, what's taking so long? I mean, you brought up Taysom Hill. He had 7 rushes for 138 yards and 8 catches for 50 yards yesterday. And Justin Fields is twice the athlete that Taysom Hill is. Put more of a package. Get him more on the field. He is probably the best athlete on the offense, period. I'm not saying
maybe the team.
Red zone.
They can use him in a lot of ways. They can use him in the slot. They could use him in the backfield. It's endless opportunities with him. I'm not saying this is going to be his position going forward. In years to come, he's going to turn into Taysom Hill. He's clearly a quarterback. We all know that. But you're making a Super Bowl run. What are we waiting for? He's an asset.
It can't be that like they see him come on the field and they're like, oh, here comes that.
Use him as a decoy then.
The thing is that we didn't have a need to rush. We are 8-2. We are making a Super Bowl run, but I think everything about this season was don't rush. No one is going to force us into doing something we don't feel it's the right time for. And
I don't know about
for whatever reason behind the scenes, we're 8-2. So while it may have been nice in situations to have had that Justin Fields, and we may have wanted him to be there, I also would have preferred if we had Najee Harris to had less toss plays. But they had less toss plays than Najee Harris in this game. So there are improvements, but I'm okay.
This team needs more weapons on offense. This team needs more weapons. Your wide receiver 2 had his 5th game without a catch. His 5th game without a catch this year. That's half.
And Van Jefferson's drop was awful.
Well, let's switch to that topic and talk about that with the wide receivers. And for example, where the hell was Mike Williams? I mean, we saw him catch a touchdown last weekend. I understand that wasn't meant to be like his play or whatever, but it worked, right? And we know he can catch. So I'm not saying you all of a sudden throw him every ball in the end zone, but I expected to see him worked in. I couldn't find him yesterday. David, what did you think?
Yeah, I know it takes a good bit of time for new wide receivers to teams to get, acclimated to that playbook, but it's so dire. They got to get him in. Here's the thing. Their second best wide receiver we had yesterday was Skronik with 4 yards. Guess what was next? No, it gets worse. Van Jefferson, 0, and Calvin Austin, -1. Literally,
it's terrible.
All your other wide receivers, not named George Pickens, 4 yards, 0, and -1.
Right.
That's not gonna. It can't work, man. They got to get Mike Williams more involved. I mean, we're talking crash course, whatever they got to do. But because starting now, they need to get him on that field more. They just the stats don't lie. I'll put it that way.
I thought thought we were doing that when we saw him last week. Do you know what I mean? That's what I thought. I thought, okay, well, he's a veteran receiver. They're going to work him in on what he can handle or whatever. And then to not see him at all. Zach,
Did they say they put him in
about this?
Early on, he actually did play.
Yeah.
I saw him on the first, like, I would say 3 or 4 drives. He played consistently, especially near the goal line. I don't know if it was him. I don't know if it was the routes. It looked uninspired. That's the best way I can say. Either his routes, his cuts weren't as clear. I don't know if it's because of something about it wasn't as crisp as they may have needed to see. But yet again, I am more confused by the usage of the Steeler wide receivers than anything. That throw to Calvin Austin was perfect, and George Pickens would have caught that in his sleep.
Yeah.
So there's specific things where I'm looking at, and I love the play calls. I don't love who the play call is to. And that's
all part of it, though, right, Zach? You need to call the right plays to the right players.
But there's a disconnect there.
Yeah, I agree.
I saw that somebody said that Williams only had 9 snaps yesterday to Jefferson's 32. So I'm not sure which is.
It's unforgivable. This isn't the most complex offense in the world. It's they're not running complicated schemes. It's handoff to Najee, deep ball to George Pickens. Why does it take Mike Williams so long to get on the field?
Well, there's another question here too, though. Is the second leading receiver was Darnell Washington? I know we're talking about that in chat. Darnell Washington is a nice, huge target. I still think he should have jumped. If he jumps, he's 6'8". If he jumps, the ball probably hits him in the midsection.
I agree.
Yep. He should have jumped. Absolutely.
Yeah, but that being said, there's a good point Vaughn brought up in chat. Why are those targets not going to Muth? Why isn't Muth running the dart? I love Darnell Washington. He's one of my favorite Steelers. But come on, he can't really run. I mean, it's great. He's a huge target. He catches the ball. I mean, that was a big catch too, late in the game to really move the ball down the field. But Muth catches that ball, and maybe he picks up 25 yards running down the field. I don't know what the disconnect is there. And we'll talk about Russ a little more later, but there were a lot of times, and I saw some stuff on this on social media today, Russ was holding the ball. There were open guys. We saw some of the Denver Russell Wilson yesterday. I think he has fallen in love a little bit, and you could see it in the first half, especially towards the end of the first half. Arthur Smith kind of on the sideline going, hey, throw the ball, throw those short, quick passes that are there against this team. He's holding the ball against zone, waiting for somebody to get open, and the rush was getting home. So, and to Jennifer's point about the calf, there were a couple times where he scrambled and it looked like he could take off, and Justin Fields would have taken off. That he started to take off, but he really didn't go anywhere because Baltimore was
I think we need to just really push the brake on that specific criticism of Wilson, because yet I said I've watched every single play from the first entire quarter, and then
hold on, Zach. Hold on. If you watched that game yesterday, which you said you didn't, there were times he was holding the ball, and it wasn't Kenny Pickett wide open, but they were showing those receivers running open. He was holding the ball. It looked like he was trying to force the deep ball.
I vehemently disagree with that take. From what I see, I saw 2 things occurring that would affect any quarterback. Yet again, we had problems with Dan Moore not being able to crash the sideline, and there were times when he had minimal pocket and he was throwing well. All the times when I saw him choose not to throw to a receiver, I looked at the coverage, and even though the receiver may have appeared open, the Ravens were ready for the fact that he was expecting that receiver to look open. He was not. I disagree with there were other times in the season I agree with you yesterday, and I could come back in a couple of days and be wrong, but from everything I watched, I didn't see that particular aspect of his game. I saw the Ravens play a brilliant game as far as a coverage, and so did our secondary. Both secondaries were really good as far as forcing coverage sack.
Now, I think it's a combination of both guys. I think there has been times he could have ran and just didn't. And then, of course, the receivers, again, we know they're not getting open as much as they need to. So I think it's a combination of both. Also, let's factor in another thing. This was the healthiest the Ravens secondary has been this season. They had everybody back that they needed back to try to stop that Steelers offense. So that's another reason why I also think Russell Wilson and Lamar Jackson's stats are kind of similar. Same passer rating, same results, except Lamar Jackson does have the one touchdown, I believe, right? I think it's because both defenses, when healthy, are really good. Baltimore's is nothing to sneeze at either when they're actually fully healthy. But the reason why their defense for passing is bad is also because of injuries.
I think they did something.
I think that they were cued into what it was we were going to do. Do you know what I mean? Our offense has not been like crazy creative this year. We don't have all these crazy weapons. And I think they were pretty cued into what we were going to do. And I think that they took that healthy personnel that they had and they looked to address that and minimize the impact in every way they could. And you know, I think that sometimes for our part, I think we don't always use players properly. I think we do. And then we fail to go back to something that works. Like I thought we've had some success with Darnell Washington, and then you use him in a totally different way that isn't as effective. And then we blame him for it.
Well, I mean,
Ravens did something completely different yesterday.
They do a lot more than what he's been tasked with. I think he's proven he can do more.
Yeah. They play too high a lot.
Yeah.
And zone and they dared Russell Wilson to throw over the middle and make tough throws. I mean, we talked a lot about playing press man and how that would cause him to struggle. You put two deep safeties back and don't give him the moon ball, that's going to be just as effective. So the Steelers are seeing a lot of different ways to attack their offense. They just got to figure out ways to. Usually, when you play two deep zone, it's the run game that breaks them out of that. And Najee was somewhat successful, but they probably should have done more with the run game to break the Ravens out of that.
I agree with Marlick here about using Connor Hayward as a blocker for Najee. I don't ever understand that.
Yeah, Connor Hayward's not a fullback.
Yeah, Ben Fennell from CBS put out earlier today with Russell Wilson that when he holds the ball for more than 3 seconds this season, 44.4% completion percentage, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Less than 3 seconds, 70% completion rate, almost 71. 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. There were times the zone confused him a little bit yesterday.
Yeah.
It wasn't like Denver bad, but we saw a little bit of it where he's holding the ball. And Zach, like you said, you didn't watch the whole game. Go back and watch it. You'll see what I mean.
I watched the whole game. I haven't rewatched the all 22 of the whole game.
Yeah,
let's make it very clear.
There were other guys running open. The guys you're focusing on, like a Van Jefferson and whatever, there are other guys out there. And part of it's the middle of the field. And late in the game, to his credit, he did do adjust. And in the second half, he adjusted. He was throwing quicker passes. I thought what they threw to George Pickens yesterday was a great adjustment. No go balls. It was all slants and coming across the field and deep ends and things like that. Probably would have liked to have seen a go ball at some point, but he didn't have time to throw it.
So Dart Sniper brings up that with 11 plays with clearly open receivers, wide receiver 2s included, on half of them, Wilson was scrambling for his life. And then where was the other one? Relic brought up that Broderick Jones was busy running his, why does this keep moving on me? Was busy running his mouth. I lost it now. Instead of, here we go. Was busy running his mouth instead of worrying about blocking people and was getting destroyed left and right. So how much did you guys feel that the offensive line factored into some of the issues that were happening, whether it was Russ scrambling or blocking issues?
Wasn't the worst game but from the edge, but the problem is we don't have good edge blocking. Even at their best, they're okay. And that's the problem. So it was okay, but it was a liability that concerns me and affects our ability to use the tight ends like we want to. And Jalen Warren's in more than Najee sometimes because you need protection that Najee can't provide. It's impacting what we're able to call in certain situations.
And look, give Baltimore some credit too. That's the third, fourth in the league in sacks. They had 31 sacks coming into the game. I thought the second holding call on Broderick was absolute BS. The first one was legit. The second one, come on, they took away a decent run on that. I mean, okay, technically his arm's over it, but he was out of the play. I mean, that was a horrible call. that being said, the referees overall were pretty good. This is a crew that calls more holding penalties by far than anybody else. And I think we could have done without the second holding call on Broderick. But then again, a couple of the Baltimore ones were questionable too.
Yeah, this is going to be reality. These two tackles are just not, they're average at best. So this is going to be a weekly thing. Russ is just going to have to get rid of the ball quicker. It's just that simple. And Arthur Smith's going to have to scheme that. It's not just on Russ. He's got to scheme open guys too. It just can't be.
When the dust settles, we're 8-2 with a really rocky blocking system. So
well,
I
Moore
think
had
he had a better game yesterday than he had in previous weeks. I mean, it's not to say it was a great game or even a good game, but it was a somewhat better game. Although I definitely agree with why she was dissatisfied.
I thought that Moore had a bad game too. He gave up a sack, was giving up a lot of pressures as well. So it wasn't just Broderick Jones. See, I'm big fan here, Bob. I'm calling it like I see it. It wasn't just Broderick. It was Moore too.
Mason and Zach gave up a sack up the middle too.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it was not the best offensive line day.
Yeah, it wasn't. So it's just another thing that it is going to be rough for Russell Wilson to really do a lot when he's constantly under pressure. I mean, I'm not trying to defend him. He had a bad game too. Like I'm just saying, he didn't have it easy either. That's what my point of this whole thing is. It was a mixture of
I do try to take it from some perspective that this isn't the Giants game, the Jets game. This was a really, really, really good Ravens defense. So did our offensive line could they have looked a lot worse? Absolutely. So there, in that perspective, I will give them some credit for holding up as much as they did, considering their limitations.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to this one comment by Charlotte about how impressed she was with the big run by Warren. She felt like he should have gotten angry one. I wanted to just say that considering that the Ravens secondary, we talked a lot about this last week, how bad the Ravens secondary is, but their front defense is good. Their starting is solid against the run. And I thought that we overall performed fairly well in the run game, considering that factor. I think that when people kept talking about it, seemed like the comments I heard yesterday on social media, people talking about the Ravens defensive struggles, people are looking at it as like a holistic thing, but it's not. The Ravens have been really strong against the run this year. And so I thought to be able to even do what we did was impressive, because I was concerned we were going to, we don't have any wide receivers. So what were we going to even do?
Yeah, Najee and Warren combined for over 100 yards.
I thought it was a decent game for them.
I just, for doing that against that defense, especially against the run, I thought that was good. But Dave, you brought up a good point about using the right players on different plays. And I think you're right. They got to pick the right player on these tosses, and it's Warren. Warren needs to be the guy for the tosses, because he has the speed that CBAT and Najee don't have to close that space quickly. Because when he did it, he was getting positive yardage. Anybody else?
That's not Najee's
3 yards
play.
back. It has to be Warren that gets those toss plays. Period.
And Calvin Austin can't be the deep sideline guy either. That's not a good. That's not a good use of talent either.
I am so glad you brought that up. Hey, the unsung hero on the team also for offense is Skronik. He got a ton of snaps because he's the better blocking wide receiver of that group after George Pickens. That's what I noticed yesterday. He was getting so much playing time because he can actually block. Yeah,
and he did a decent job at that. Relic brings up this point here that he didn't like that Tomlin backed Broderick Jones in the press conference. He said he has no problem calling out players over the years, but Broderick Jones was horrible. And he goes on to come back and say, how many times do we see Tomlin call out the punter last 2 to 3 years, but won't call out Broderick? I don't understand why he won't do the nudge to maybe light a fire under him. What do you guys think about this?
I think Broderick was that bad.
Whoever goes
Is it just me?
Just go first.
I don't remember Tomlin ever calling anybody out. I think it was forced to at some point with Presley Harvin because he was so bad.
He was so bad.
I was going
to say, are we really at Presley Harvin level? I mean, I don't know that we're there
No,
yet.
I don't think so.
Look, there's a huge difference between a punter and a guy you draft in the first round who's young, who you traded up to go get, who you're actually forced to have to play here. So he's going to defend him. He's going to do that because he's got no choice.
Yeah.
A punter's a punter to Tomlin. I mean, you see how he talks about kickers and punters compared to a number, your first draft pick from last season. Yeah, he's going to defend him. There's no surprise here for me with that at all. And I think
Tomlin's
fine.
From everybody is that Jones isn't performing well. I don't think anybody thinks that he is. Do you know what I mean? But I think that
he's coming off. He's coming off 2 of his best graded games. The last
I didn't
2
say
weeks.
I thought he was okay.
I didn't say he wasn't doing better. I just said he wasn't performing where most of us would want him to be. And I do think that there's a factor of that. You have to handle him a little bit with kid gloves, not because he's a head case, but because he's like a 23-year-old kid.
Yeah.
They're young.
Out of position.
Yeah, and Tomlin's complicit in some of his struggles. He's the one that put him out of position. So
or not.
I like that.
I don't care whether he's playing out of position or not. I mean, I think that, we see it happen to these young first-round draft picks all the time. They have too much put on them. Do you know what I mean? When they come into the league and they struggle and they fall apart.
Yep.
Yeah, our sniper says, I don't understand having your head coach shit on you and the media is going to get a player better. They have 50 hours a week together in person for coaching. Look, I think Tomlin says it all the time that, we hear it from players all the time that he doesn't have any problem calling players out, in coaching sessions, pointing them out on film, bringing up their mistakes, and all of those things. I just don't think he's going to do it.
As far as Broderick goes, I have to look at Dan Moore, and you can all agree, because the last couple times I've talked about me looking at Broderick in the all-22s, it's been painful from the get-go. I didn't see in the first quarter, I did not see any play where I was like, wow, there were no classic Broderick plays. Later on, there was a hold where, he missed the guy, and that was his first thing. He jawed a little bit, but I don't mind that chippiness. Even though I agree with Land, he's not where he wanted to be, there was definite improvement. Now, if that improvement was from a D- to a C, granted, but it was still improvement. So I have to look closer over the last little bit to see how much of it what it really was. But to go a quarter without feeling nauseated by a Broderick Jones play, that's improvement for me.
Well, yesterday,
Relic said he should cool off on Broderick Jones, but it seems like he could start a club with Charlotte and they can talk about how mad they are about Broderick.
As far as the PFF grades, though, real quick, though, just yesterday. So Broderick was 53.1 overall, 61.8 against the run, 58.6 against the pass. Dan Moore, hang on one second, I just had him up. Dan Moore somehow had a 49 run block.
Oof.
And a 58 point, just like 0.2 of a point higher on a pass block, but got the higher overall grade. How does that work, PFF?
For this game, Bob?
Yeah, for this game.
Look, for this week, I think there's a gas leak in the PFF building because Nick Herbig was graded terribly. I mean, like genuinely, like 39, 40.
Oh,
like
really?
Nick Faribaugh or they posted on there, and I didn't believe it. I went and looked. Nick Herbig is graded. So there is a gas leak. Someone check on the PFF people, get them out of the building and make sure they are safe, because how can you grade him that badly?
Yeah, actually, I had it backwards. Broderick beat Dan Moore by 0.2 on the pass on pass blocking, 58.6 to 58.4, 61.8 against the run for Broderick, 49.8 for Dan Moore. But somehow Dan Moore was graded a 54.5 and Broderick a 53.1 overall.
The math don't math.
The math is not mathing.
Charlotte's at PFF's a Myles Garrett merchant, so we're not listening to them anyways.
That's for sure.
Their highest rated, their top 3 was Peyton Wilson at 92, Cam at 90.5 and then Sam Milo at 90.5.
Yeah.
I think Cam had one of the better games of the day for sure. Cam was awesome.
Cam was awesome.
Yeah. Hopefully that continues.
And bottom line, when you look at you look at the issues that we're cutting you off out there.
Go ahead.
You look at the issues that we're having, and while we are struggling all that, if we can do all that and be 8-2,
yeah.
To me, I'm very impressed, because I do believe there will be a point where Mike Tomlin will have everything hitting the way it's supposed to be. We would have done all the things wrong and worked it, and it'll be at the right time.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about what that means for this team.
Yeah, I agree. We would definitely be remiss if we finished the show without talking about special teams today. I think we have to talk about Boz. The Steelers, I saw the stat today, and I want to say that in the league, it's like something ridiculous, like 2-12 overall or something when kicking field goals to win games. With the Steelers are 2-0 this season when only kicking field goals. We did this against Atlanta, if you remember, at the beginning of the season. So we're very grateful to have Boz. I think we all knew that Justin Tucker was struggling some this season. I don't know if anybody was expecting him to struggle as much as he did yesterday. I saw somebody said earlier in the chat that
only someone had predicted this.
That Tucker got paid off before the Steelers game. I don't know what happened, but he had the yips. He was terrible.
Good.
He missed. Thank God he missed too. All of those kicks yesterday. And then he had the nerve to come out to the media afterwards and blame the turf at Aperture. And I don't know, call me crazy, but how does it affect him and not affect Boswell? I wanted you guys to weigh in real quick. Dave, start with you on the special teams. Also, Corliss Waitman, some excellent punting from him.
Imagine signing a punter and not drafting one, not paying top of the market money for one, and still getting the best out of the bunch. Corliss Waitman is I said this a couple of years ago when they brought him in to spell Presley Harvin. He's a better punter than Presley Harvin. He's decent. You don't have to draft or spend a ton of money on a punter to find a punter.
Dave, you might be a better punter than Presley Harvin.
As far as Boz was fantastic. I love Tomlin's comment today. He said, I wish Boz would stop winning, MVP of the game. It just points out our warts on offense. Right. It's kind of true, right? I mean, it's just we shouldn't need him to kick 6 field goals to win, but thank God we have him to kick 6 field goals to win.
My fantasy team sure appreciated him. I'll tell you that. Them 50-yarders were doing me right. 24 points Boz scored. Look, I think Cameron Johnson is probably better than Corliss Waitman. I wouldn't go that far. Yeah, but I love the job he's doing. I think from an open competition standpoint, it'd be interesting to see who would win that competition at this point. But we could have had Waitman for the last 3 or 4 years, and we would have never signed Cameron Johnston. I like him. He's a great player. Look, bottom line is Boswell's the best kicker in the NFL right now. There is no and. I know Brandon Aubrey has a 65-yarder, but he kicks for the Cowboys, who suck. So Oz is doing it under pressure. He is winning games at this point.
He's doing it at Aperture Stadium.
Yeah, exactly. At the hardest place to kick in the NFL.
Yep.
I 1,000,000% agree. And just to toot my own horn a little bit, I said on Friday, I got the score wrong. I said on Friday the Steelers would win because Justin Tucker would miss a kick. I was half right. He missed 2.
We were all in the 30s, right? We were way off. We thought it was going to be an offensive.
I think Leanne was in the 20s.
I think I was in the 20s.
Well, I didn't see yours. I'm sorry, Leanne. We got to give you credit for that because we were all way off. We were just drinking the Kool-Aid with the offenses there.
Oh, here. Relic brings up one last point about Broderick Jones. He said he looked it up. Jones has allowed the most sacks in the NFL with 8.
Stop picking on Broderick Jones. We know he's struggling. We know he's not. He's playing out of position. What are we going to do?
He's also playing against the number 1 edge rusher every week. So in 10 games, 11.
Way to go, Relic. You set the whole thing off.
Yeah.
Well, no. What I'd like him to do is how many did he have in the beginning of the season and how many has he had in the last couple of games? Has he improved? Because I think a lot of those sacks are going to be in the first chunk of the season. And then in the last 3 or 4 games, I'm guessing he's improved. That's my guess if you look at that. So I think that's this. It's
I'm sure he gave up one yesterday, though, didn't he? I think him and Dan Moore both gave up one yesterday.
I'll start grading Broderick Jones when he's playing left tackle where he belongs and not right tackle.
Dan Moore gave up a sack yesterday, too.
Yeah. I think that's what I said. I think they both
we all
did.
A lot of there was when the offensive line doesn't have their best game and we beat the Baltimore Ravens, I could be okay with that.
Yeah. Today's not the day to be picking on the offensive line. They did enough to win.
It's a big win. It's a big win. They got it done. I think we have to be happy with that. I think that if Broderick Jones continues to go in the right direction, I think that that's kind of all we can ask for because the alternative would be really bad. So
yeah.
Anyways, my turn on the whole Boswell thing.
Yeah.
The guy is definitely top 2, 3 in the league because he's converted 9 50-plus field goals. That's tied for second with Aubrey from the Cowboys. The only one that has more is that Kami Fairbairn from the Texans with 11. The guy has, Bob, to your fantasy point, he has the most fantasy points in the league for kickers, and he's available in 66% of leagues in Yahoo. Go get your boy.
Oh, that's true. I don't remember the last time I saw a game where there was such tension between kickers that were never on the field at the same time. And me and my mom we were going ballistic because Boswell deserved that. He deserved to go up head to head against someone who everyone always says is better than him and prove that Boswell just straight up. Because Justin Tucker's missing kicks here and there, and Boz gets up 57 yards. Looked like I could make it from 64. So
Yeah.
I'm so happy, and it's so automatic. Like yesterday, I actually looked out on my phone and forgot to watch the kick because it's Boz. Like it's just a natural thing. So I appreciate that kind of comfort.
Undefined with the freaking Roger Jones comments.
I know, our research assistant here. Roger Jones is allowing 1 to 1.5 per game besides the Cowboy game. That game log stops on 10/28 and hasn't been updated. Okay.
Actually, that's better than I was expecting. That's a better average. So I'm weirdly enough okay with that. My mother. Why is my mother writing in Thai? For anybody who doesn't know, I was raised in Thailand. So this isn't out of left field.
Translate for us, please.
I'm trying to see.
Yeah, I think the point that Dan Moore.
I think she just threatened you, Zach. I don't know.
Year is a moot point.
I have no idea.
Yeah, that's the thing to remember.
Bob. We know. Darth Draper, I don't want to ignore him, did ask us if we're worried we're going to get cocky for the Browns, and you'll need to tune in to our show tomorrow to find that out. Because of the short week this week, we will be back filming on Tuesday. We usually film our preview show on Thursday, but we have some obligations on Wednesday, so we'll be filming on Tuesday. We'll be here. We want to hear what you guys think, so please come back and join us tomorrow at 6:30 for the preview show, and we'll do a little good, bad, and ugly to start it off from the Ravens game, and then move into talking about previewing the Browns. Guys, do you have any final thoughts before we go?
On this officially, I don't know. I want to officially move the Steelers to contender status to me. It's not until we are now a contender in not the AFC in the NFL. I am confident saying that.
Yeah, I agree. I think this puts them with the big boys. Now they just got to keep it going.
Yeah, I think the best part is, unlike the Lions, who are, kind of the flavor of the month at this point in the NFL, they've kind of supplanted the Chiefs. I think the Lions are playing their best football. I think they've been playing their best football, and I'm a little worried about them in the playoffs. I think we're ascending. The best Steelers teams always ascend in the last quarter of the season, and we still have room. We are not. This isn't 2020 where we're playing our best football in October and November. We're not playing our best football. We're playing increasingly better football every week. If the offense continues to trend to be competent, I know this is a little step back, but we still did have 6 scoring drives. They're not always all going to be field goals. If they continue to trend up and the defense rises to the level of the competition like they did this week, the good part is we always worry about the quote-unquote Tomlin game. Well, except for the Browns, there ain't no Tomlin games on the schedule. Everybody we're playing has a high-level offense and quarterback.
Yep.
So if the defense does go out and shit the bed, for lack of a better word, it's because a very good quarterback had a very good day against them at this point.
Yeah.
No, I agree, Bob. In general, I think that the defense has let everybody know that they're a Super Bowl caliber defense. I'm not 100% there with the offense yet, but the defense definitely let everybody know, hey, we can shut down the best offense in the league. We'll shut yours down too.
Yeah.
Interested to see what happens when they play Philly. I think that's the next big test. I don't want to hear about Kansas City. Philly's offense is legit. They have 2 very good wide receivers, a mobile quarterback. and probably the guy who really should be the MVP of the league, Saquon Barkley. That's going to be box office. I can't wait to see that.
Barkley single-handedly destroyed my fantasy season, basically, in all my leagues. Every time. Kills me.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate if you've tuned in today and joined us in the chat and commented with us. We appreciate it. It makes the show so much better when we have all of you engaging. We would like you to follow us on social media. You can see all of our social media handles there under our name. You can also follow the Steelers Sanctuary page on Twitter, as well as the Steelers Sanctuary podcast page. We're also now on Blue Sky if you're on there. We're working on building that following as well. So please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. Also on YouTube, it helps the algorithm so that we show up for other Steelers fans. If you're watching this show later after the show's already aired, please don't be shy about leaving a comment below the show. We'll try to address it on the next episode. We still definitely want to hear from you about your thoughts. Again, we appreciate all of you guys joining us, and we will see you tomorrow night.
In case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Yeah.